So when you see the mother jar, there's always a baby jar around the corner that also needs a holder, and we're going to make a jar holder without breakout plastic. So we're going to build this in pieces, and that's your bottom piece right there being made, and it has about a 20% infill. This is going to take 2.5 hours on the print. You can see there it doesn't really focus on the bright LCD display too well, but that's what it's starting to look like, and you can see the cross patterns come in. So my video editor, Kdenlive, was crashing when I sped up the videos, and waiting for an hour to render so I can do voiceovers on this, so it crashed 3 times. So finally I just took off the change speed on the segments there and let it finish after 2 hours of rendering. So that's why the video is a little bit longer than usual. So that's finishing up on that piece. Camera's not focusing on the head too well, it's focusing on the display. So that's the gonna be the base. We have little poked in peg holes along the perimeter, and then the handle has a peg up on the little piece. This is the top piece now. It's almost the same as the bottom piece, except when I subtracted out the cone for the base, I just subtracted out a whole cylinder. So this is a lot simpler, it's flatter, and this has taken, I think, 48 or 50 minutes to print on this. So we're up to about 3.5 hours. And then after printing this, there is 10 rods or posts that support the top piece from the bottom piece. And then we did a trial handle to get the diameter right, because the lengths are given, the handle should be the same as the rods, as you'll see. So this is just going around and filling this 20%. You can see the cross pattern hatch infill there, 20% infill. And it's almost done. These are stills in there. There's the handle post coming up. So the handle will have little sockets in there that'll just, fit right in, and then this will be all super glued together. That's the idea. So we're about 99% done. Once it fills that little top handle piece. So there, that job is finished. You can see the blinking light on the heater bed. And then we got to print rods. So the first attempt of printing rods, I did not do a brim around the rods, and I put 10 rods on the table, kind of scattered. They didn't, so that was a disaster. That aborted. This one has a brim around it. There's much more support on the different 10 rods. So I printed these 10 rods, and they took 3.5 hours to make 10 of them. Even though the rods are round, the plastic breakout doesn't leave the rods round. You got a hard edge on it. I could have made hexagons or octagons or something like that, so there would have been a flat part of the rod that's intentionally left on the bed. But this cup holder has no squares in it. Everything is circular, a base, kind of an oval for the handle to pop out. And then I started gluing 5 of them together, and then I turned it upside down so I could glue the other 5 in, and I broke out I made a stub handle just to test it, about 0.78 inches, to see if that diameter was right, how it would look, how wide it would look, and how the hole would look. And I didn't test the length because they'd be the same as the rods, no reason to test that. So this is printing the rod, and this took about 45 minutes, or the handle, This is 45 minutes on the handle, and I think this is a 25% infill because I want a little more support and structure in there, so you can, if the camera focuses, you can see that there's a little more density on there. And it even has a breakout in the holes of the handle, which was kind of interesting. So I finally got all those glued together, and then I put the top on to glue it. I just put the top on any old way. I didn't align the handle pieces, and I turned it upside down for weight because it's easier to get the pegs in the hole when it's upside down. But then I confused myself and I started gluing in the rods in the top, not in the bottom. And so I had to bust that apart. So this is the handle coming off the flex bed. And this is the breakout that peels off really nice. Once you get a little corner on there, you can just pull this down. That's breakout plastic, and then there's breakouts in the hole, which is a little bit harder to get out, but not too bad. But nothing like the first one where, over half of it was breakout. So there's the hole inside that handle, and this one too has a nice hole in the handle. The rods are 4.5 inches tall. The handle is also 4.5 inches tall. And I think it's 0.4 diameter and a 0.135 or something like that inside diameter. So there's some nasty little plastics on there, and then I had to take a knife and sometimes get the edge off it. I also hit all the rods on a belt sander, which was very helpful. So the sander kind of smoothed out the edges, and the ugly inside edges to the rods were faced towards the center, so you don't see them as much. But the idea is to get that as round as possible. Doesn't look too bad. And then I started gluing it together. Now I made the mistake of not putting all the pieces in. I tried my little test piece to see how it fit. It fit good, so I knew the handle should fit good. I actually made it, I think, 1/1000th of an inch, a little bit tighter. I didn't want to risk too much. This is where I make the mistake of not testing all the pieces. I start gluing first, and that's a mistake. Some of the rods are not in all the way because the super glue is drying too fast. So I glue this to the base. You can see the base because it has that cone cutout on the bottom, and the top is a bigger circle. And so this is the hard part. So that's already stuck in pretty good. And now I turned it upside down because it's a lot easier to line these up, and I put glue in all the holes, which is rather difficult. If I had to do this again the third time, and I don't think I will, I would have used threaded rods in the base and used some kind of screw thread, but I wrote all this code in OpenSCAD, and I'm not sure how to make threaded screws or anything like that. This was the hard part, trying to get all these posts to line up in these holes while the super glue is drying. And it's just kind of tricky. It's a lot helpful to have it upside down than right side up, since the base is glued and it's easier to see the holes on the bottom. So I did this while it's upside down. And you can already see the mistake I made. What do they say? Measure twice, print once. I failed to measure the handle, and I couldn't figure out why. There's a gap on the base of the handle. It's because the correct handle size is not 4.5 inches. The rods are 4.5 inches. But this is where I think I go to the garage and go get a mallet. And you see the gap in the handle? Like, what's that about? I was like, why isn't this going down. The bottom's glued and the handle has this little gap in there. Well, if you look at how the top handle goes right to the top of where the rods go, but the base of the handle has a little gap in the peg, which I did not account for. Like, whoops, I kind of goofed that up. So I measure this and realize that the handle is not 4.5 inches, and the rods are 4.5 inches. Oh well. I think I can put a C-ring. What I did is I took the little gap test piece, the short handle, and I brought it over to the scroll saw. But when I cut it, it just melted it together. So there you go. Whoops, I goofed that up. Because, see, right in there, that handle base doesn't go to the bottom. So I just glued it really tight and says, that's it. We're going to live with that. Wipe off the excess glue. Luckily I had some acetone to get the glue off my fingers. And this is where I take the little stub handle test piece and cut it on the scroll saw, and it doesn't turn out good at all. But this fits, and I was happy with it, in spite that big mistake that you see in there. And we just gob it up with a lot of super glue and hope it holds. So, lesson learned in manufacturing mechanics here. So my next project, I'd like to make a stepping motor plastic mounts and something to play the xylophone with. So this is what I take to the scroll saw. I bring this to the scroll saw, and it turned out to be just a total mess. I broke it up, and I realized if I'm going to cover it with anything, I'm going to print something and not chop it off. So it's good enough, and it's done.